appreciate you. Hey, Brittany. You're
Hey,
so
y'all.
cute.
Thank you so much for coming out this morning. I know it's a Saturday and it's super early, but I'm feeling the vibes. Hey, y'all.
Thank you.
So, we are about to start in just a second with our keynotes. And I just want to thank you all for making this happen. Like, looking out and seeing all of y'all faces on a Saturday morning, as Ericka said, at 9:30, and y'all are in the space, and we are turning up to juvenile and excited about our health and wellness on a Saturday. It doesn't happen. And this is truly my love letter to my home state. I wanted to do something. I wanted to bring a little bit of a different flavor to the space because there aren't a lot of spaces for us. There are not a lot of spaces where we can just be, right? And there's not a lot of spaces that are inclusive of all of the different shades, diversities, experiences that we all have. And I wanted the space to be able to hold and be that container to be able to hold all those things. So thank you so much for coming out and joining us. We are about to start with our keynotes, just making sure that they are mic'd up and good. DJ Huxtable, could you hit me with can you do that Stro Elliott one? That's my jam. I know. Thank you. That's cool. Yeah, this is my song. Listen. Do y'all want some vocals or do I need to spit a hot 16?
Closer.
You want me to do a hot 16? Oh my God, this is gonna be terrible. You gonna give me a beat then? Okay, we'll do it this one. Hey. Okay, now I'm good. We at the Chase Center on a Saturday. I'm sitting at the front. And where is my bae? Because I don't think he's here, but I see y'all faces. Thank you all for being in our spaces. That's all I got. Psych not. I'm going to keep it rolling like a drop top. I'm like Issa Rae. I told y'all I owed y'all a hot 16. It took me 36 years to figure out how to rhyme. I'm not joking. I'm dead serious. But actually, Tasha might have better bars than me. Tasha got bars. But we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks, DJ Huxtable. You can cut. No, y'all can get her to do it later. But please give a round of applause to our keynotes, Ericka Hart, Michelle Browder, Dr. Jamila Perritt. Thank you so much for coming, for being in the space. Oh.
Thank you.
You all ready?
Yeah.
All right, come on up. Yep, you can come on up wherever. I mean, right. Jamila, you can sit.
Where you sit?
Wherever. You can sit right there, Michelle, or wherever you feel comfortable. Oh, absolutely. This is family. I know,
so
right? Shout out to Premier Choice Events for being in the space. No, I'm going to sit here. I'm good.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Give us some space.
So it's all together.
We all
You're
family
cozy.
in here.
You're cozy.
We all family. Yes. All right. So, is everybody mic'd up? I just want to make sure everybody can hear you.
Yes.
You feeling good?
Yeah, I think y'all can. Oh, y'all can. Hi.
I'm loving all of the different vibes and outfits on the stage and the colors. I'm feeling it. So thank you so much for being in this space with us. So I guess we'll start off and talk a little bit about what you all would love to share about yourselves and your backgrounds. And I will kick it off to Michelle first.
Did you say Michelle?
Yeah.
You did. Well, let me see. I am a college dropout. I always start with that because of the things that I've accomplished. I am an artist, a creator, a disruptor, a historian, and someone that loves Black women as it relates to our story and who we are and our power. And I created what is called the Mothers of Gynecology. It's a monument to uplift, inspire, liberate, educate, not only Black women, but this country about who we are, where we came from, and where we're going. Is that good enough?
I listen.
Okay.
All the things.
All right, Ericka?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good morning.
a Black, queer, non-binary femme. I'm also a breast cancer survivor. I think next year is 10 years in remission. Thank you. Yeah. I share that because I did a lot of advocacy around educating Black people, especially Black, queer, and trans folks around breast cancer, and I did so by being naked. So it's interesting that I'm wearing clothes, but it's just that I'm cold. I'm also a parent, a new parent, which is exciting. Thank you. And I'm a sexuality educator. So a lot of the work that I do is talking about the intersections of gender and race at the intersection of pleasure. Yeah, so that's me.
Thank you. And Dr. Perritt?
Hello, everybody. Dr. Jamila Perritt. I use she, her. I am a parent. I'm a sister. I'm a partner. I'm an OBGYN and an abortion provider, and do lots of work. I'm a DC native. We do still exist. There are people who grew up in DC, who still live in DC. We're still there, and just really happy to be here. My work is really at the intersection of healthcare delivery. I still practice obstetrics and gynecology and provide abortion care in the city that made me who I am in Washington, D.C. And so I still take care of people every day and every opportunity I get. I'm an herbalist and also a breast cancer survivor, and deeply, deeply love Black women. And so that is at the core of all of my work and everything that I do. So happy to be here.
Thank you for sharing. All right, so we're gonna get into it a little bit. Can you all share with me, and this can go to absolutely whoever wants to answer it, why is talking about our individual and historical experiences in the context of health so important?
I'll start. Why not? So, I was one of those kids growing up that always knew I was going to be a doctor. I don't have a memory of ever wanting to be anything else. But I also knew that it was never going to be enough just to be a doctor. I grew up, as I mentioned, in Washington, D.C., and it's nearly impossible to grow up in that city and not to understand the impact and the influence of policy, of legislation, of systems and structures designed to eliminate us, to destroy our communities, to make sure that we have, or to ensure that we have nothing. And so for me, part of the work that I came to do in the world, the work that I'm meant to do in the world, is really to talk about those connections. How do we understand systems and structures and the role they play in our lives, and what our opportunity and obligation is to disrupt and defeat them. In order to do that, though, you have to understand the history. When you're training in any kind of healthcare field, one of the first things that you learn how to do is to take a history, right? So the medical student, the nursing student, the medical assistant student goes in and they gather the history first. And it's not just the history of present illness, like what brought you in today. Like, oh, I have this thing on my arm that, I want you to take a look at. It is their own individual history, their medical history, their family history, their social history, right? All of those things shape the way that whatever is happening in their body and in their lives is showing up today. But then you have to go even further, and this is the piece that medical education does not do well, and I think that's by design, right? It's not accidentally that this part is left out. It's individual history, but it's also community history, right? It's generational history. It's the way that we interact with the world, how folks understand my place in the medical system and their own place in the medical system. The commitment of medicine and the medical industrial complex more broadly to an ahistorical and a contextual context, again, is designed to teach you to forget, right? To forget who you are as a healthcare provider, but more importantly, whose you are. Because if you don't belong to anybody, you can do anything. And so really grounding myself over and over again in the history of the community that I care for, the history of the world, is the way that I think we get free. Medicine's not gonna get us free, right? Doctor's not gonna get us free. But being able to be well, to decide what makes you well, right? Not for me to decide what makes you well, but to facilitate and be a partner if you wish, has to be done in a way that is grounded in history.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I know, I appreciate that now, but it makes me think of history, Michelle. Tell us a little bit about the history.
Y'all ain't ready. I'm just saying. and I say that jokingly, but I'm really serious. It's like we were talking about the NMA and some of the conferences that I attend, and a lot of the medical providers that are black have no idea about this very popular painting that was created by this man by the name of Robert Tom, and he created 45 pieces of art to depict early medicine. And when it came down to a man by the name of J. Marion Sims, who's lauded as the father of modern gynecology, and each one of you, I'm sure, have had a pap smear, with the exception of Rose in the room. Black women, those utensils or the instruments, the speculum, the Sims position, all of these instruments are named after this man, but yet it was black women. It was black women, black girls, black babies that he experimented on, that he mutilated, that he murdered. And so as an artist, moving back to Folding Chair, Alabama, y'all know what I'm talking about.
Period.
Sorry. It ain't no longer the civil rights movement for me. It is picking up that chair and wop wop.
Now, what about the hat talk?
The hat.
It was a hat talk.
About the camaraderie, you know what I'm talking about? So, but moving back there to see that there's this statue to honor J. Marion Sims in front of the State House of Alabama that black people built. That black men, women, and children, over 200 of them, were trafficked to Montgomery, Alabama to build this building, and there's no sign of it, but yet here's this white doctor that created these fistulas, and so for me, the art is very important to speak to history. As Nina Simone said, it is our duty as artists and creatives to depict the time in which we live. And so I've tried to do that to counter the Sims narrative as the father of gynecology. Where are the mothers? And so I created a monument to not only speak to them and what they went through, but where we are today.
Yeah.
The sterilizations that's happening. Or, at our borders. Don Wooten, shout out to Don Wooten, who actually exposed that for Mexican women, the immigrants that were coming to our United States, as hypocritical as we are. I'm so sorry. My country is a sweet land of liberty. Liberty is that we are treacherous as a country, and what we've done to black bodies, black people, immigrants. And so I just feel like for me, my art and my ministry is to speak truth to that, and then to show how we just had a congresswoman here. Where is she? She gone? Yes. That we have to speak to the Crown Act in 2023. We got to have somebody to tell us that it's okay to show up with our locks. So I'm sorry. Let me roll back, because I'm getting rolled.
A word.
Let me bring it back.
No, a word.
You know what I'm saying? We need a Cory Booker.
Yeah.
And what's her name? Ayanna Pressley. To tell us that it's okay to tell these white folks it's okay for us to wear our hair in this manner. So I am just determined as our doctor to do what we have to do to get the wedges out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ericka, did you want to add anything or any thoughts?
I mean, it's been said, I think. We were talking in the back, too, about telling the truth and how there's so much resistance to the truth. I went to a grad program not too far from here for human sexuality at Widener University, which is situated in Chester, Pennsylvania, which is one of the poorest cities in the country. And in this program, I took a history of sex program. And the professor said, you know what? There's not a lot of history about sex out of Africa, so we're gonna shift to Europe now. And that's really how that went. And I looked and I said, that's not real that you just said that. That there's no history out of Africa, a whole continent, right, about sex at all. And we are also situated in Chester, Pennsylvania. We have not acknowledged stolen land in this space. We haven't acknowledged the impact of gentrification and redlining that would necessitate a porous city, right? That's all intentional, and it also directly impacts people's access to pleasure and information about sex and sexuality, the freedom of expressing, right? You're not gonna be able to want anything necessarily pleasurable if you don't have clean water, right? If you don't have clean air, if you don't have clean soil, if you don't have quality food to eat, like that's not gonna be, you're not gonna wanna masturbate, right? It's not gonna be up top of mind if what's coming out of the faucet is brown, right? And that is, we're talking about histories, right? And there is a resistance to, there's not a resistance to do this, but there is an intentional practice of erasing Black people entirely. Even talking about Lucy and Ericka and Betsy, their contribution to the field of sex ed completely erased. So not to talk about the ways in which Black, Indigenous Africans contributed to that field is such an insurmountable disgrace, right? So really just presencing the history, what we're seeing right now in Palestine, the resistance to talk about the truth of what is happening, how so many people are being silenced in sharing the truth, right? Being doxxed, right? Receiving death threats because they're telling the truth. I mean, it's the same from Ferguson all the way to Palestine, right? It's the same of talking about maternal mortality to talking about the genocides that are happening in Sudan and the Congo and Tigray and Haiti, right? There is a complete resistance to talk about our pain. And, you know, Zora Neale Hurston says it best, like, if you don't share your pain, they'll kill you and say you liked it. You know what I mean? And that it's so important to continue to presence and continue to put in people's face the truth all the time. Yeah.
A word. And y'all got silent on masturbate. Don't think I didn't notice that. We here for
Nasty.
all the things.
Y'all was dancing to Juvenile.
I know, like that.
At 9:30.
Listen,
we don't want to talk about masturbation.
We're gonna talk about everything.
Back that
okay?
ass up.
From you know, come on. We're talking about all the things. And when you're thinking
do we need
about
to yell
health,
penis real quick?
I don't know, maybe.
Okay.
But
I told you I'm a
listen,
sex educator.
Listen, right though? But it's the full spectrum of things, right? Like from pain to pleasure, all of it is part of the human experience. And we need to acknowledge all of the different dynamics and we're not gonna sweep it under the rug. We're not here for stigma. Right. We're here for welcoming and having an inclusive space. And we're gonna be talking about things. All right? So buckle up. All right? All right, so we're gonna transition a little bit and talk about systems. And Ericka, I'm gonna ask you specifically, what has been your experience navigating or interacting with healthcare systems with the identities you hold?
Fun times. Not at all.
Sarcasm.
My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was like in her early 20s, and she passed before her 40th birthday when she was 39. And I was like 13 when she passed. So I never really understood what she was experiencing, or she never really maybe even had the language to express what she was talking about. And one of my mentors says, you know, some of your passions and your convictions choose you. It's not something that you can just go out and choose. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer, which is very strange. And my experience of navigating that space, if you've ever been with someone or you have had breast cancer, I think typically this is always the case. You go in to the doctor's office, and the first place you go, it's not to the doctor. You go to insurance. And you have to give your insurance card, and they have to verify that your insurance is correct, and then you go to chemo, right? So I would go to insurance, and there was always issues with my insurance as I was part-time. It was not great insurance, so there was always somebody that needed to be called or someone that needed to be reorganized or whatever. And then when I would go to chemo, I was with a woman at the time, and they would come and sit with me, my ex-wife. And the nurses would walk by and stare at us. And I was like, why do they keep looking at us? And this is New York City. So I'm like, and this is New York City, this is Chelsea, if you're familiar with Chelsea. If you're not familiar with Chelsea, Chelsea is like gay. Like it might as well be named gay. So I'm like, this is so strange that they're staring at us. And my ex was like, that's not actually strange, right? Like homophobia exists all the time, right? They're not expecting us to be in here holding hands, right? They're confused why I gave you a kiss, you know? So it's the experience of homophobia, but then also anti-Blackness with insurance. I had 6 rounds of chemotherapy that my doctor said were necessary. And the insurance company said, actually, you're only gonna have 5 rounds because we don't think it's medically necessary to have the last one. Right? And I said, why don't you think it's medically necessary? None of you are doctors, right? My doctor said that I need it. So my doctor is advocating for me to have it, which is strange. And then I had to take to the internet to actually have the 6 session, right? And it wasn't just social media advocacy. I had to call governors and I had to call council people to actually get me to be able to have that 6th one. So I had no idea how impactful medical racism was until I was in that structure. The first time that I had chemotherapy, chemo is usually administered through a catheter because you have to go pretty much every week for the most part. So the first time that I went, it's a long needle. Sorry if people have needle phobia. It's a long needle. And they said, okay, count to 3 and we're gonna administer. I said 1, 2, 3. And I felt like the wind had been taken out of my whole body, right? It was so, so painful. And the nurse turned to me and said, you didn't numb your chest before you got here? You didn't numb the catheter? And I was like, you didn't give me any, I mean, like tears. Like it was so painful. And they were like, oh, you didn't numb? Like, you must numb before you come. I'm like, why didn't you tell me to numb, right? You didn't even ask, did you numb? And the thing is, the numbing cream, it will numb your chest in 20 minutes. So really, we could have just waited 20 minutes to administer that, right? So just the so many loopholes and so many stressors to healing, right, as a breast cancer survivor were just completely astounding to me. I went back to work 2 weeks after I had my double mastectomy, and I was advised to go back a month and a half or even 2 months later, and I couldn't do it because I had to afford insurance, right? This is all directly linked to anti-Black racism, medical racism, ableism as well, right? So those are my experiences, and then there's even more experience when I had a baby, but that's just the beginning.
No, thank you. Sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story. And I think, one of the things that stands out for me really in all of this, and one of the reasons why it's important to think about a systemic approach when we're trying to address inequities in care and anti-Black racism and medical, in all of the spaces, not just medical spaces. Because the question that we are being asked over and over again is, who deserves to be well? Who deserves to be well? And clearly there's a collective belief that we don't. And so when I'm talking to other healthcare providers, there are a couple of, I think, flaws in the approach to addressing this. One is a focus on individual bad actors, right? This idea that doctor is just a bad doctor, that nurse is just a bad nurse, right? Absolutely untrue. And it predisposes us to think that the solution here is more Black doctors, more Black nurses. The reality is that we've been trained in this same system. And you have to work hard to survive with your soul when you get out of this, much less find your way back to what brought you to the work. So Black doctors, Black nurses, more Black medical providers in the same system that doesn't believe we deserve to be well is not the solution. And I think the other thing that it really raised to the top for me is that people often ask the question about, like, how can we teach people to be more empowered and to advocate for themselves. And I respond to that in a couple of ways. One, it's not my job to empower anybody else to do anything. People are born inherently with power. And so the work that I'm here to do, the work that we are here to do, is to disempower the system. The systems that are standing in the way of our ability to be well. Not to teach you how to speak louder or more clearly, or in a way that people will listen to what you're saying, but to show that the system is what is keeping us unwell, and the work for those of us who sit in positions of privilege is to actively and aggressively disempower and disrupt the system. That's the only way we're going to get to be free. That's it.
Yep.
Thank you. That makes me, I'm getting chills too while we're going through this, because I'm thinking about, like, how many times I've gone to the doctor and felt like I've had to be mindful of how I showed up, so that they felt like I was worthy of getting care or to be listened to. How many times I felt like I had to run down a resume to get them to understand or believe what I was experiencing. And that has been the same experience for plenty of my family members. And thinking about being a caretaker or a caregiver, and navigating those spaces and the challenges that I've had, even though I understand how the systems operate, is incredibly disheartening, right? So I want to shift a little bit and talk about like looking forward. when we think about the political climate now post-Dobbs with the rolling back of reproductive health protections, how do we learn, acknowledge, and honor our intersections? How do we bring people along the way? Like Audre Lorde said, our chains are interconnected. How do we avoid sensationalism that is often used to weaponize us against each other?
Mm-hmm.
And anyone can answer that.
I can only speak to what, y'all hear me? I can only speak to what I feel like my call is to do in terms of moving forward, which is through art. You know, everyone, you know, it's subjective, art is subjective. You can read into it whatever you want. But when you look at three tall, big, beautiful black women on black-owned and operated territory that was built by black women, conceptualized by black women, built with black dollars, and when you bring people to that space and you begin to talk about how healthcare, when you talked about how you have to show up, this is 400 years of marginalizing and dehumanizing black bodies and black people, right? So we have a long way to go in terms of moving forward. We're taking baby steps with like FACOG and SFP and all of these other people, and they're trying to skim the surface of it. But we have a lot of unpacking to do, and I think that for us as a community, we are all that we have, and we have to unpack within ourselves, right? So there's a book that I want to lift up to. It's by Linda Villarosa, so for the readers out here, she talks about healthcare and how her father, prominent black woman, New York Times bestseller list, and how her father, prominent black, you know, just upscale black folk, had to go into the hospital, and this was what, 2020, I believe, 2021, and he called his daughter and said, "They're treating me like a nigger." He's one of those guys that will wear an ascot. Y'all know what the ascot's like, the real Dapper Dan type of 1920 guy. And he's like, "They're treating me like a nigger." So I think that we have to look at where we are now and continue to advocate for ourselves. But then also, where are the black doctors? Where are the black midwives? Where are the black doulas? And what happened to that way of taking care of us first? Is that, you know what I'm talking about? I'm just an artist.
That's what we're doing right now. That's what we're doing right now.
You know what I'm talking about? So, but it all stems from the history and having to go back 400 years of unraveling this lie that we're less than, you know? And so we have to do it with each other and speak in life like what you're doing right now.
Thank you.
So there are a couple of things I think that, one, as an abortion provider, I'm going to talk about the impact of Dobbs a little bit, if you'll indulge me, just to sort of contextualize what we're dealing with. So this was June 24th, 2023, when Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health was decided before the Supreme Court. But what we can't do is think that that was like the beginning or the end of the story. Right? You know, what Dobbs did essentially was move the decision around abortion access back to the states, right? And there's like a long history in why and how we got to that point, what the intention was there that ties into disenfranchisement at the state level. We are only able to ban abortion in this moment because it was paired with attacks on democracy at the state level, right? Those are the things that went hand in hand. But even before the Dobbs decision over a year ago, people did not have access to abortion. This idea that Roe was the law of the land, that abortion was legally permissible and protected constitutionally, never guaranteed access to abortion to many folks in our community. And it isn't just people in the Midwest, not just people in the South, people in DC where I live, who can see the abortion clinic from their home and still not be able to access this care, right? This goes back to systems and structures. I can say in the same sentence both that Dobbs has been devastating in terms of access for people more broadly, and Roe was never enough, right? But that brings me to the question about, you know, liberation being connected and folks being bound. There's a big uproar now in having conversations, a desire to engage in conversations around abortion advocacy. And I'm very clear about why that has happened. It's happened because now white women are impacted. That's the reason why we're having this conversation. That's the reason why they asked me to be on CNN and C-SPAN and MSNBC. Because when Roe was decided in 1973, very soon after, 1975, y'all were all on board with poor people not having abortions when the Hyde Amendment was passed and then reaffirmed year after year after year in every appropriations bill. You weren't worried about it then, but now y'all lost coverage. Now y'all lost access. Now you have to travel in order to see me. And all of a sudden, we all should be rallying and concerned about what's happening. I think one of the biggest successes of white supremacy theory and praxis is that it has convinced white women universally that they're free. And that is the reason why they never felt like their liberation was tied to mine. And this is the first time where they're starting to question, well, maybe I'm not as free as I thought I was.
Come on.
Right? Maybe I don't have the same rights as they guaranteed me, right? Because it was never about us. It was always about them and has always been about them. So as long as white women believe that they were free, then they have no impetus to stand alongside, to join in the fight and the struggle for collective liberation. And so I try to take the opportunity now to remind them that y'all were never free. You were loose, but you were never free. And so as we start to really evaluate what is before us, what the path ahead is, I am devastated by the harm, the violence, the trauma that people are experiencing and will continue to experience as long as they cannot access abortion care in this country. And I am emboldened by the fact that everything is gone now. So what do you do when you have nothing? What will you build? What does this opportunity mean? Is there an opportunity here to lean deeply into Black feminism and to center those at the margins? Or will we just bring back Roe so white women get their abortions again and the rest of us continue to suffer? So thinking about what organizing looks like in this moment, and I'm not talking about trying to beg and cajole and bring white women along. That's not what I'm here for. But what I am here for is to understand that if we are not working toward collective liberation, none of us will be free ever. So I'll stop there.
Wow.
Period.
Wow. Seriously.
I gotta take a second because that was a word.
Yeah.
Ericka, you think about anything? Because I see you.
I mean, how do you follow that up? I think what I think about, I'm so glad that you presence white women because they oftentimes are off the hook in terms of the oppression that they cause historically and currently. There's not a lot of history that actually talks about the pain and trauma at the hands of white women. I think about Caroline Bryant, who murdered Emmett Till, lied and said that Emmett Till broke a Jim Crow law, and they didn't. And Caroline Bryant got to actually die on her own terms at the age of like 90 or something recently, right? And I think, and there was no accountability in this country, none towards her, right? And I think we have to really have a conversation about gender, right? And the structure of gender and how impactful gender is, because the only people that truly have gender in this country are white people, right? Black people are literally here and still related to as in chains, as a perpetuated gender. Our gender is dangerous. We are hypersexual. We are promiscuous. We have big penises. We have large labia, large clitoris. Like, we are used for experiment. We are not demure, calm, quiet, soft, need to be handled with care. That is white people, right? So when we're talking about gender, it's really, really important to be talking about how it intersects with race and how that informs the fact that Margaret Sanger, the creator of birth control pills, was a eugenicist, right? Was somebody who experimented on Black people and the Black people in Puerto Rico as well. It's not something that's talked about, but white women love to celebrate Margaret Sanger, right? It's no coincidence with that. So we continue to not tell the truth about how these structures have impacted people to this day. And I think One group of people that we haven't really talked about, and there is a silent genocide towards them, is Black trans women.
That's right.
Right?
That's
There's
right.
not a lot of conversation around Black trans people, Black non-binary people, Black agender people, and it is incredibly important that we continue to lift up Black trans women, that we continue to bring them into these spaces, because as long as Black trans women are impacted and murdered without any sort of accountability, none of us will be free.
Yes.
Right? And there is a resistance to Black trans people and Black non-binary people because we are literally the embodiment of freedom.
I know that's
right?
right.
A resistance to these colonial gender structures. And I think a lot about Lucy and Ericka and Betsy and all of, indigenous Africans that were enslaved, because there is a complete erasure of gender there too, right? There is an assumption that Lucy and Ericka and Betsy were women, right? But I don't know how they identified their gender. They didn't get to do it, right? They weren't related as human, right? So that's still to this day, we are oftentimes as Black people constrained to one particular function, and that is to do labor. And that's how we're seen by all of these institutions, academia, medical, so on and so forth. So the resistance to colonial gender paradigms is something that I think is a way forward, 100%.
Yes.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So thinking about as we are moving forward, what are some policies or actions at a national level that we need to keep front and center of mind? Where do we need to focus our energies collectively?
I'll just share quickly. I just want it all to burn. I really do not care about, I really don't, none of these people can be trusted. I'm sorry.
No.
They really can't. The structure works as it's designed.
Right.
And it's designed to harm people. So we have Black Congress people, we had a Black president. All of these people have caused immense harm. Obama just released a statement talking about how we need to stand with Israel. What's going on? That is, yes, he did. Yes, he did. But Obama is the same person that did drone strikes. That is, it is, and AOC, Alexandria Ocasio, whatever, yeah, that person.
AOC.
Literally, hey, thank you, literally signed agreement to give Iron Drones to Israel last year, and then now is on Instagram or wherever saying that we need to call our Congress people and ask them to cease fire. Why am I calling you when you just are gonna sign things and then cry later? I'm good. I'm so over these people. They are literally just puppets to this system, and I'm disenchanted with it, and I really, really want it to go away. There needs to be a whole other structure. It's old white people, old money that is running it. It don't matter how many people I call or talk. I shouldn't have to call somebody to stop violence. That is ridiculous. I shouldn't have to call somebody so people have clean water, right? I shouldn't have to call somebody so people have abortion access, huh? That don't make no sense. Just do what's necessary. Just have the, huh? I don't know. I just feel what is y'all purpose?
Absolutely.
What policy? No policy. When the policy exists, we are still harmed.
Yes.
They don't follow no policy. Sorry, I'm over it.
No, we need to hear it. We need to hear it. Absolutely. Dr. Perritt, you look like you were about to say something.
One, that I agree. And I guess the other piece that I would offer is, what does survival pending revolution look like in this scenario, right? Absolutely, we deserve all of those things, and absolutely the government as it exists now is not designed to do that, right? There's no intention on doing that. That's not the goal. That was never the goal or their intention. And so when we think about it, and that isn't to say that I don't think it is important that someone is on the inside trying to do the work, right? Someone is trying to create or mitigate the tremendous harm that is universally being caused while we are in the process of building a system or moving toward revolution, right? I'm not the right one to do it, but maybe somebody is, to be able to do that. I think the challenging part about doing that, about working inside the system, is that it's super easy to get lost. and even for folks who went in with the best of intentions. A system that is founded and bolstered by violence, genocide, enslavement, has that in its DNA. It is not something that I believe can be reformed. And so what does it look like to engage in harm reduction in the meantime from a policy standpoint while we are demanding change? The reason why we are seeing so much of this play out, in my opinion, the way that it is because we are at the tail end of a dying regime. They had hundreds of years to wreak havoc, destruction, murder, rape, plunder, pillage, colonize. And we are at the end of this now. And so there is sheer panic. There will be much more violence and harm to come. But then they're on their way out. My grandmother used to say all the time, wait on time, baby. Wait on time. And I'm not saying that we should wait. We work while we wait. We resist while we wait. We fight while we wait. But best believe that we are living in a moment that is a watershed moment. Because, and I'm not saying that I think that this is going to happen in the next 5 years. I'll be long gone and have transitioned by the time we see the end of this regime, this system. But I believe it's coming, and they do too. And that's why they're moving like this.
Yeah.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Because I recently I got this fellowship, just a little brief context, as an artist, Art for Justice. And when the whole Montgomery brawl, lie, mob, attack black men, that's what it was. When all of that was going on, I was in Oakland, California, and I called some of my artist friends, and I was like, hey, listen, we need to galvanize this time because, people are excited because of what they're seeing in terms of coming to the rescue or going to the rescue of this black man that was being mobbed, but by a white mob. My colleagues told me, Michelle, we can't do that. These are black folk. We can't do that because that would stop our support.
That's right.
Our money. And I was devastated. These are black folks, these are artists. So I said, you know what? I'm going to create a tour. I invited 7 artists to go to Oakland, California to learn about the Black Panther Party. So when I say I am, you say a revolutionary. I am.
Revolutionary.
See, they don't quite understand
No.
what it is to be independent.
Right.
With the whole, we're talking about no autonomy. But we have the autonomy. We are a billion-dollar industry company. Black folks, our money, trillions of dollars.
Yes.
And so we went out and we talked to the first black woman that became a Black Panther. We went and we talked about how they opened up hospitals,
That's right.
infirmaries, and they had their own. They took care of their own. So when you talk about moving forward, I'm not making on Superman either, friend. We are independent and we can build our own. But we don't get that. You know what I'm saying? We can take care of each other and ourselves.
Yes.
And this, no telling where your black girl health con is going to go. No
Yeah,
telling
that's right.
what midwives, doulas, or doctors,
right.
or lawyers, or people, or foot soldiers that's going to come out of this. So I applaud you for doing it. But it's time for us to talk to each other. Stokely Carmichael told this one white guy, he said, you go home, we got this. You go talk to your people because we need to talk to ours. So that's our way forward. We got to talk to each other and build up that money, the capital. And how do we invest? Some of these black vendors around here, I came to shop. Some of you know what I'm talking about? So it's like we have to take our black dollars and figure out a way to get through this. Because you said that there's a dying breed.
Yeah.
But best believe, as they did Fred Hampton, they'll come after you when they find out.
Oh, 100%.
So I've been pleading to Hamas. Remember that America is still in white supremacy. We have nothing to do. Black people have nothing to do with this other than our tax dollars. So I will say that.
100%.
That's right.
We don't. We don't.
Can I say one other
Absolutely.
thing? So one thing that came to mind when you were talking to Ericka that I meant to mention, I just want to echo and lift up. Ericka said a couple of times, accountability. And I was thinking of it, Michelle, when you were talking too, right? What it means to be in community with one another, what it means to build together, and how we do that intentionally without recreating the same systems and structures that are paralleling white supremacy model. And I think accountability and how that is often conflated with punishment, for example, is something that we frequently see replicated in our community. The idea that the solution is to punish. And this happens to bring it back to reproductive health, it happens all across the board, particularly for young people who are accessing care in reproductive health care spaces, right? Pregnancy is a punishment, is an example of that. You get pregnant when you're young, we're going to withdraw support, right? And so thinking about what it means to build our own, to invest in ourselves, and how we can really understand the models that are designed to destroy and not bring those back in to the spaces with us when we're dreaming of something different. One of the things that really brought me back to Black feminism, following my career and being out in the world and practicing, was really the opportunity to dream of something different. And that isn't something, you know, the education and training to be a physician is a long time, right? You do your 4 years of college, you do your 4 years of medical school, then you do 4 more years of residency, and then I did 2 years of fellowship, and then a year of graduate school, right? So think about that time that you're in there. And never once during that time period are you asked to imagine something different other than the system you're currently in. You're told to learn how to work within the system and that you can make incremental change, right? You can continue to push from inside the system. Don't push too fast. Don't go too far. But you can push a little bit in places that are acceptable, right? But never, what does it look like to dream of a world that's different? That is a practice in Black feminism. That is a practice that we have been gifted through our ancestors. And so to engage in an idea generating process, a dreaming about the kind of world that you want is necessary to build this system that we want by design for ourselves, by ourselves, right? To create something that we know we deserve in the world. But in order to do that, we have to dream of it. We can look at the parallels with white folks in general, right? No imagination at all. None.
Zero.
Because that's why there's so much like stealing and thievery, right? In colonization. Because they have been robbed of their imagination. They're out of practice. And so we continue to see that thread, to see that gift in this space, right? Dreaming of a world where Black girls get to be free, women get choked up. Like, what does it look like if we're free? Right? And so understanding that power, the power of dreaming is huge. And I love you for this. I love you for creating this space and for an opportunity to think about and imagine a world for all of us. So you can blame that on my Scorpio moon.
Moon.
I'm a Taurus sun, so I'm not supposed to be up here crying on stage. But then that Scorpio comes in, you can't do nothing with water signs. So.
No, I feel you. I'm a Cancer moon. So I didn't know that. That meant the water works, but it does.
Oh, the water, those water signs.
Yeah. So I just want to say thank you all so much for bringing all of your unique perspectives, experiences, and just all of the kiki and tea, because I mean, like we got to the foundations of like the Black experience and talked about a lot of things. So my last question before we go to like questions from the audience, because you all will have a chance, in reflection of all of the things that we touched on today, what comes to mind for you as, you know, recommendations, thoughts, as it pertains to Black health?
I feel like from what you were just saying, it was making me think. This year, I had 4, almost 6 friendship breakups. And a lot of it was, I just had a baby this year. So a lot of people would say, yes, when you have a baby, things are going to shift. People are going to leave your life. You are not going to be available to them anymore in the way that they want you to be available to them, and they're going to leave. And I thought, yeah, sure. I had that experience with breast cancer. It was mostly white people that left. Like, this is my family. This is my chosen family. This is mostly queer people, queer Black people. Ain't no way they're going to go. And they did, right? And there was a complete discard of myself, a non-binary person, and my partner who's trans, right? And that is intentional, right? And I think we have to be incredibly mindful. And essentially what you said is not mimicking these structures in our interpersonal relationships, right? The discarding of people, and it's different. I'm not saying that if somebody does something harmful to you, right, there does need to be some level of accountability, even though we don't live in a world that has any sort of models for accountability, right? Our model for accountability is prison.
That's right.
Is go away.
Or
so
repair.
we don't really have, right? We don't have anything, right? We don't, even apology, people like, sorry I did that. Like, they don't even want to honestly be with you and be with the pain that was caused and actually listen. So really working on not discarding the people in your life, especially Black people in your life, especially Black, queer, and trans people in your life, because what's happening is even as young people, we are being discarded, right? The highest rates of homelessness, of houselessness, are Black trans people, right? And that is because our families are saying, you can't be a part of the family. You need to get out of the house, right? So then we have to go find homeless shelters to go live in, right? That's family doing that, right? And there has to be a avenue that we do not mimic white supremacist structures in our relationships, because it's incredibly harmful. So us actually collaborating with each other, being in community with each other, having really challenging conversations when something seems tough or when things shift. Maybe somebody needs more support when they have a baby, just a thought. Like, let me show up differently. I don't know, strange. Maybe somebody needs more support if they've been diagnosed with, a major illness, or they live with a disability. That's also, we discard folks that live with disabilities. Like, how many of your friends have a disability or have a chronic illness, right? Are we picking friends or picking partners because they're able-bodied? Are we picking partners and picking friends because they're straight and cisgender, right? I think we have to be intentional about how the world informs even what our interpersonal relationships look like, and really care for each other from there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been getting chills the whole time, so that's why I'm saying. So thank you so much for that, because I think you lifted up a really important point about not discarding and perpetuating what systems do to us as a people, right? And all of that is about how do we take care of ourselves.
Right.
If not us, who? Because we know the systems don't have it. They're not going to. They're inherently built to be exclusive and keep us out. So now that we are wrapping up the keynote session, we're going to go to questions and answers. Does anyone have a question? Sure. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to start right here, and then we're going to go around.
Hi, I'm Taylor Neville. I'm the founder and executive director of Who Speaks for Me. And so it's a question, but also a challenge. When we talk about all these systems of oppression, we forget about Black women who've been in prison or who are in prison. And I'm a survivor of the prison industrial complex. I founded this organization while I was incarcerated. And when we talk about reproductive health, particularly to the doctor, we have a reproductive justice and carceral space program that we're starting. But how do you all move forward in these spaces, being inclusive? Because I often feel excluded. I've made a point of telling people, I did 4.5 years in federal prison, right? Health is a big thing. Food justice is a big thing. Reproductive justice is a big thing. And how do we make sure we center that? Because no matter how marginalized we are in the free world, it's far worse when you're incarcerated. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that and
Question
for
and a challenge,
sharing
they
your
said.
story. I appreciate the question, and I accept the challenge. So a lot of the work that I do, that the organization that I lead does, is looking at the ways that the medical industrial complex and the prison industrial complex are deeply tied together and work hand in hand. We are facilitators as healthcare providers of criminalization of individuals and entire communities. We often initiate and almost always perpetuate the criminalization of folks when they are coming to a place to seek care. And so part of it is, one, owning that, being very clear about the part that I play, that we play as collectively complicit to perpetuating that system in particular, and then how we love to pretend like we're not in it, it's not our fault, because there are good doctors, good nurses in jails that are trying to do good work. And right, it's like the not all men argument whenever you're talking about gender depression. And so really being very clear, thank you for lifting that up, for bringing folks into the space with that lived experience. And it is something that, a space that I work in diligently and encourage other people to seek. Thank you so much.
Can I just speak to my father is the first Black prison chaplain for the state of Alabama. That was appointed by George Wallace. I spent many a days and nights at Tutwiler Prison, which is one of the most notorious prisons in our state for women. So I get it. And what we're doing is to not only help with transitioning, because that's an issue, for providing space, but also doula care for women who are, in our state, are still being chained by the legs when they have babies. I hate Alabama. Oh, y'all ain't gonna put this on. I hate Alabama so bad. What they care about the sanctity of life, they will tell you you can't have a baby, tell you that you can't get rid of one, and then stick a needle. We just had the first nitrogen death. Have you all heard about this? We're the first state to put a man to death with nitrogen.
Wow.
We love the death penalty.
Wow.
So sister, I hear you. Don't take me there, because Chaka Khan was my babysitter, and she killed many of her husbands because she was abused. Nobody got to the root of the situation. So that's what we do in our space, and we're hoping that more people will do the same.
Yeah. There are, thank you for that. There are countless anti-trans legislation across the country, and what that does is that criminalizes being trans. So many trans people are being forced inside of the gender binary within the prison industrial complex, because prisons, they may have an LGBTQ ward, but that puts queer and trans people more susceptible to harm because you've outed yourself in going there. But if you're a Black trans person, I think about CeCe McDonald, who was forced, and Shay Diamond, who was forced to be in a men's prison when they are women, right? So when we're talking about anti-trans legislation, that means that if you are a parent that tries to get your child HRT, hormone replacement therapy, or you are just existing in your body as you believe you should, you can be sent to prison. So 100% talk about the connection of colonial gender structures and how the police operate to reinforce gender colonial structures. In New York City, they had stop and frisk. Most of the people that were harmed by stop and frisk were Black trans people, and they would just police Black trans people, and the assumption that they were Black and trans. So 100% that connection, but also talking about capitalism and its direct connections to the prison industrial complex. So many stores, Victoria's Secret, North Face, all of these places use prison, hospitals use prison labor, right? And so many people do not know that. So thank you for raising that. I think it's important, and it is 100% left out of these spaces all the time.
I'm gonna say one thing real quick. If you hadn't gotten sort of the thread so far, I wanna be like really clear and make it explicit that any care provided inside federal, whether it's jail, prison, detention facilities, is inherently marked by reproductive injustice. It is not possible to achieve reproductive justice when you are under state or federal custody. And the only solution for that is abolition. Right? So let's be clear that if we're talking about ways to address, again, another system that is designed to subjugate, to humiliate, to harm, to separate, the solution here is not a nicer, better prison with better doctors and better nurses, but instead the abolition of prisons and jails in custody states more broadly. That is the way forward.
I'd argue you can't have reproductive freedom with the presence of prisons.
Absolutely
right?
not.
Prisons need to go away in order to have reproductive, like they just go hand in hand.
I'm sorry, excuse me, I just gotta come in.
Yeah.
Because in Alabama, we're building the first $1 billion prison, I'm just saying.
See?
Just thought you wanted to know.
See, and all of those resources go there instead of reproductive care. But we don't have money for reparations or anything else. Yeah.
I mean, no.
Yeah.
And just to clarify,
money
when
for
Ericka
cages.
was talking about North Face and blah, 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 like these are organizations that use prison labor to make their product
Yes.
at a discounted rate.
Yes.
I mean, people in prisons get paid cents on a dollar
Yes.
to create these high whatever,
Yeah.
you know, high
Those coats cost
these high
$200.
profile
Listen, $30
companies.
panties. Right.
So, sorry, here's our next question.
Good morning. My name's Alexis Harris, and just to set the scene quickly for my question, which really is a continued conversation starter. I am a sister, I am a daughter, I am a transplant to Delaware, a digital marketer, and also an entrepreneur. And as a Black woman, I feel as though even the conversations thus far, we are great at understanding what the problems may be and identifying different initiatives. And from even what you've mentioned, I can count financially the ways I've been impacted from systemic racism, medically as well, not even thinking about reproductive, but when it comes to like dermatologists, or as well as my eyes, and insurance is saying a prescription is going to be hundreds of more dollars because it's cosmetic to insurance, but to the doctor, to alleviate other potential problems like glaucoma, it has to be this medication. And I'm like, well, why is that? And I'm doing the work of calling and figuring that out. But I find myself almost being stagnant to what's next. So as an entrepreneur, I've learned the importance of focusing on one thing. What's that one thing to drive the initiative of everything else, almost like a waterfall effect? Just as the question before, bringing up the importance of being incarcerated and the different initiatives with that, and what I've heard each of you individually speak on. My question is, what would you say, or how could we leave this conversation today with what's the one thing so we can all be together, going back to community and accountability? I feel like everyone just gets so woe is me, or whatever their main passion is, as opposed to maybe the strategy of coming together as a collective to be able to then kind of be a resource and fuel every other initiative under that as a whole for Black women in the Black community, which also is adjacent to the Black men as well, which then also affect Black women and how we show up in the world every day.
I didn't hear the question.
One thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll offer a start. I don't have an answer, right? So I don't want to lie and be like, I know the one thing. But when you were asking that question, it made me think of, did anybody see that Toni Morrison movie, it's The Pieces I Am?
Documentary.
Like the documentary. Like, and it wasn't a Toni Morrison movie, right?
Yeah.
A documentary about Toni Morrison. But in it, there is a series of interviews, right? They're reviewing clips and sort of all of that. And so there's one interview where the reporter is talking with her about the time that she was writing Beloved. And the time she was writing Beloved, she was like writing, she used to write late at night or early in the morning. She had small kids, and then would take it to work, and she was working as a publisher, right? And so the mostly black secretaries in the secretary pool were typing up Beloved for her, right, during that time. So she was writing Beloved at night, she was teaching, and she was also an editor. And so the interviewer is asking her, you're doing so many things, how are you managing to do so many things? And her response was, I'm not doing a bunch of different things, it's all the same thing. And so my reluctance, I guess, to come up with one thing is because the one thing that I'm doing is going to be different than the one thing that you need to do in the world. But we are all doing exactly the same thing. We're working toward liberation in our different parts of the world. What we need to move forward to get free is unity, for sure, but not uniformity. And I think those things are very different. The last thing that I would offer is really an analysis that Loretta Ross shared with me not too long ago about movement, right? Movement work. She said a bunch of people coming from the same place, doing the same thing, going in the same direction is a cult. A bunch of people coming from different places, doing different things, but headed in the same direction is a movement.
Yes. Yes.
And so, you know, for me, that really resonated because I don't have to do what you do. You don't have to do what I do. But if we are all moving toward justice, then it is not a bunch of different things. It's all the same thing.
We're gonna take 2 more questions from this table, and then we're gonna wrap up. Sorry.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Tamira Mosley. I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for almost 24 years now. And I work in in the ICU, the medical ICU at Christiana. My question is, Dr. Perritt, is actually geared towards you, but I know the things that I have experienced just from being a nurse up until now and watching the change up until now. I want to know, do you still encounter racism from your counterparts? I'm not sure if you're in a single practice or if you're in a practice with everyone. I mean, right now we're so interdisciplinary, but I still see it, right? And I mean, I'm very strong voice in my unit, you know. But do you still see it today? And how do you deal with it still, even with the years of practice that you've been in? How do you still deal with it?
I mean, the short answer is yes. Thank you for that question. Yes. In the same way that I still experience gender depression, right? Those things cannot be disentangled from one another. I don't know. How do you deal with it? I don't know I have a wonderful therapist. You know, if you check her out, Dr. Alicia Hodge, SlayYourAnxiety.com, who works specifically with Black women, helping us to navigate this toxic, harmful world. I try to take good care of myself. I try to take good care of other people, understanding that I cannot, that health and healing is beyond me. But I am here in this moment, so use me, right? Is the prayer that I pray before I take care of anybody. Understanding what my purpose is, that regardless of the vitriol and the hate around me, they can't steal that from me.
Period.
It doesn't belong to them.
Period. Period.
It doesn't mean that it's easy to exist in those spaces. I was talking with these folks backstage about my experience on the Maternal Mortality Review Committee. I co-chair DC's MMRC. And I want to be clear, I'm not here to speak for the Maternal Mortality Review Committee in any capacity. But sitting in those spaces, and so the charge of maternal mortality review committees is to review the deaths of pregnant or recently pregnant people in the city or the state, right? Maternal mortality review committees are notoriously violent and harmful. The goal, it seems a lot of the time, is to try to find a way to blame this person for their death. The majority of deaths we know in this country during pregnancy and the postpartum period are Black women and birthing people. And I serve on DC's MMRC. This is a city that I grew up in. So the cases that we're reviewing are cases of people who lived in neighborhoods where I lived, went to school where I went to school, right? People who I know could be me at any moment in time, right? In any twist of fate. And that to me is less overt than what we think about, embedded in your question about what it means to deal with racism in the medical profession. But what plays out at these committees is absolutely anti-Black racism, right? It's all of the ways that it plays out. And so for me, this is a long answer to your question, like what do? I try to care for myself in order to be present in those spaces. And I also try to understand that when it's time for me to go, I have to go. Right? There aren't places where I can stay and still be whole and still do the work that I need to do. So I would offer that, I guess, if I had any suggestion. We glorify disruptors a lot, right? We idolize them, admire them with just cause. There is also a toll that it takes to be a disruptor. There's a cost to that.
Come on.
Right? You know, so being disinvited to meetings because I'm divisive, argumentative. I'm intimidating too, in case you all 5 feet of me.
Terrifying.
Right, yeah,
Terrifying.
apparently so, right? And so there is a price that we pay to do that, but I would rather pay that price than pay the price of my soul in doing work that is not aligned with my moral compass.
Yep.
Stop apologizing. We're going to make it happen.
My name is Corey Arroya. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee with Holistic Healing, and so I do a lot of work on sexual health education, particularly in Tennessee where we are the Bible Belt and dealing with like bullshit daily. And a lot of the comments and things, so this is more of a comment and a thank you. I think like one of the things that we're all hearing in this is like, how do we move forward? What are the next steps? What do we do? Because we as Black women always want to do something and be about it and fix it. And I think one very important thing that everyone is mentioning, and I'm offering a translation of find your role in the movement. Because every role has an important part. It is a spoke in the wheel that keeps the wheel going. And so where you have the disruptors, you need the supporters for those disruptors. Where you have the cooking and the chefs, and feed the community. Put in labor where you have the capacity, and support the people that need the support the most, because we're all moving. So think of it less of a road and a path, but spokes in a wheel. And how can we all come together to fit the wheel to keep going?
That's right.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I told you we had some wisdom in this space. We're gonna end with
Okay, sorry to hold y'all. I am in love with this conversation, and something that is coming up for me as I'm hearing y'all talk about anti-Blackness in the medical profession. I'm also wondering, how does fat phobia plays into this? I'm thinking about me as a large body person, my partners, my family. I'm thinking about the history of what I'm understanding about the BMI and how it's actually a social construct. And Black people are dying at higher rates from non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension. And so I guess the question I want to ask is, how do we sit with fat phobia and Black community while also being clear that Black folks are dying at a higher rate? And like, how do we be in relationship with both of those? And not make the assumption that because someone is fat, that means they're inherently unhealthy. And so like, how do we have conversations about being fat, being in larger bodies, and like the ways in which that can also be divisive?
Yeah, it's such a really good question. There's an excellent book called The Anti-Black Origins of Fat Phobia by Sabrina Strings. Really, really excellent historical text that draws all the connections to how we relate to Black people, Black femmes in particular, as fat, period. And then when there is a Black fat person, then the treatment of that person is astounding, right? And in our medical structures, it is the belief that if you are fat, that is the focus, right? My partner just had top surgery, and he waited for 2 years to go to this top surgery doctor, well-renowned in New York City. And he walked in, and she came in the room, and she said, "We can't do the surgery, your BMI is too high." And he said, "You didn't even do any measurement to know my BMI. How do you know it's too high?" She was like, "I just know." So literally doctors have individual guidelines, their own, of what BMI they're willing to work on and what they're not, right? And my partner was like, "Well, what are the complications as a fat person to have top surgery? Like, I don't really understand what the problem is." And they were like, "Well, there's just more complications as a fat person." And they're like, "Okay, what are the complications for a thin person?" And they were like, "The complications are the same." And they're like, "Okay, if the complications are the same, then why are you not doing this cosmetic surgery, right? You're not doing heart surgery, you're not doing anything else, right?" So there is a deep, deep problem of fat folks going into medical systems and literally being left to die because they're being blamed, as you were talking about, for their fatness. I think about Black pregnant people too, Black fat pregnant people who are literally blamed. When I had an emergency C-section, they spent so much time trying to figure out what level of anesthesia to put me under because and I quote, the anesthesiologist said, "You're a big person. So we have to make sure that we are able to not to numb you in the appropriate way." And I was like, "Well, how do you numb thin people?" "Oh, it's the same, but and I'm like, "So you just wanted to say that I'm fat. Like you just wanted to make that clear, right?" So I think it's really important, like you said, to separate health from fatness or body type, right? Because it's not connected, right? There are thin people that do coke every day, smoke cigarettes, eat McDonald's. They are not healthy, right? fatness does not mean that you are then unhealthy, right? That is not the case. The football players are massive, a lot of them, and they are related to as athletes. But the regard is that it's literally just you don't get to exist, right? Because you're fat. You are supposed to be thin. The fat body is related to as temporary, right? You are only supposed to be fat for a second, and then you need to change it. Like, you can change it, right? It's baby fat, right? They do this to children, right? Once they start walking, they'll lose the weight, right? It's all temporary. And one of my favorite educators, Sonali Rashatour, talks about how we are all heirlooms of our ancestors, right? And how all of our bodies are different, but a lot of my body reminds me a lot of my mom's body, right? Like, I have that same body, so the resistance to that body, to be like, I want to snap back, or I want to change it, or I want to get thinner, right, is a resistance to her, right? And that's what I think about a lot of times, is the intersection of honoring our ancestors and honoring all the ways that our bodies look, and this complete resistance to this major structure that, similar to the prison industrial complex, is not talked about. So thank you for raising that. I hope I answered that question.
Right. Listen, y'all, we have had a powerful conversation. Y'all make some noise. My God. Wow. I feel like this is a never-ending conversation. The work is being done. Thank you, Alexis, for that conversation, Farron, that contribution, everybody who has shared. We're doing our work. We're doing it. It's happening, all right? So listen, it is time to transition to our breakout sessions. So in this room, I'm going to describe them. You want to be here? Be where you want to be, okay? The Mothers of Gynecology. Miss Michelle Browder is going to stay in this room, all right? Take an opportunity to learn more about Michelle Browder's Mother of Gynecology Monument, a sculpture and mural that honors enslaved women who were subjected to medical experimentation. Learn about how her work and organization is not only transforming Montgomery, but also seeking to revolutionize how we educate our medical providers. So that session is going to be right in here. All right, the next one, Silent to Empowered, addressing power dynamics in pregnancy. I need to go there. Who's teaching this one? I want to go there. Addressing power dynamics in pregnancy and postpartum careers. This session is going to be right out here to this door, and then you're going to bang a left, okay? That is Silent to Empowered. Lastly, in the room, y'all, I keep messing this name up, so I'm going to say it right.
Poussey.
Poussey is around the corner. This room is going to have the orchids, all right? This is where we're doing both the Yep, our sister circles.
We're going to do our sister circles there.
Sister peer circles.
Yep, we have Black Girl Manic and Still Magic, a conversation that challenges navigating mental illness and cultural stigma as a Black woman. And then my favorite title of our whole program, they all lit, but this one cracks me up. Get somebody else to do it, okay? Reflect on the complex obstacles of struggling to maintain a healthy balance between career, ambitions, and personal life. And again, that's gonna be out to the right, all the way around the corners where the vendors are, and that's in the Poussey room, all right? Y'all feeling good? Y'all feeling blessed? Y'all feeling abundant? Y'all feeling good? All right?
Yes, yes. So as y'all take off, we're just going to bless these beautiful folks who had come into the space and dropped a word this morning. So we got some whole bags for y'all from Arvia Walker. So you know you gotta get your swag. You get your swag bag from Arvia Walker. So those whole bags are for y'all. You can pull them out. They gonna be sad, but those are for y'all. Yes. Okay. Wait till y'all see y'all raffle. Those is nice.
So nice.
Love it.
So nice.
So that is appreciation. We thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for showing up in the space. Can we give one more round of applause? All right, DJ, you got us? DJ Huxtable, let's go. There you go. Tell me something good. We heard that, right?
It's such a pleasure. Y'all are so brilliant.
We should take this show on the road.
Okay? Seriously.
see it? ANARCHA, lucybetsy.org. Throw your hands up if you have it. ANARCHA, Anarcha, Lucy, Betsy.org. 3 enslaved girls of 11 that were used as experiments in Montgomery, Alabama. I was introduced to these 3 girls when I was just 18 years old at the Art Institute of Atlanta. I heard about J. Marion Sims from this painting I told you all earlier that depicts these 3 girls, one on a table, the other 2 peering behind a sheet. You have J. Marion Sims standing there stoic with his arms folded with a speculum, which eventually is named after him. And I remember going to my professor, asking him, I was like, what does this mean? What is, in Alabama, they teach you that Rosa Parks sat on the bus, got arrested, Dr. King had a dream. That's the extent of our Black history when I was growing up. Luckily, my parents were of the Black Panther nature, so they went out and they were the first in all of their fields, the first Black, military, all of this. And so I had an identity already about who I was and, my Black history, but it wasn't until I was 18 and I came across that painting at my art school because I was going for visual communication and design. So it was a part of my figurative drawing class. And so my professor basically, when I asked him, what does this painting mean? Who are these girls? He looked at me and he said, you go and you figure it out. So I said, okay, white man. I will go and I will figure it out. In Atlanta, Georgia, there's this place called the Shrine of the Black Madonna. That is where I went when I wanted to know more of Black history and who I am as a Black kid at 18. And they told me immediately about this painting, and because I inquired if they knew about it, and they said absolutely. And they began to tell me that this was the start of, or it's supposed to depict the 3 girls that was one 17, 18, and as young as 13 years old that were sexually trafficked, that were impregnated to replenish the stock. So if in 1808, if we're not going back to Africa, because of the transatlantic slave trade, right? Of course they did. We have the Cotilda that they just found recently in Mobile. But in Alabama, 1808 transatlantic slave trade is outlawed, so we had 40,000 enslaved African men, women, and children that were trafficked to the state. By the end of the Civil War in 1865, there's 435,000 enslaved African men, women, and children in the state of Alabama. So I'm talking to, back when I'm 18, talking to these guys. They're educating me on this history and Black women and the roles of, in which they were forced to play, if you will. And so I went back to school devastated because my instructor had this picture proudly displayed on his desk. I'm like, but why? So I go back to school, and he's like, I created my whole portfolio. I was set to graduate. I created my whole portfolio to honor those 3 girls, right? I was so touched by the story. And my professor looked at me and said, Michelle, your portfolio is too Black. I'm not going to pass you. You need to stay another 6 months to revisit your subject matter. Because what I did was I created T-shirts. I created mugs and brochures. I created this whole campaign around these 3 girls, but I labeled it for the African Arts Festival, right? But it was Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsy. He was like, it's too Black. Everything you're doing, from the songs that I created to the commercials, it was just too Black. And so he said, either you stay and get it together, or you find something else to do. So my father, I told you all earlier that my dad is the first Black prison chaplain for the state of Alabama. And he's the one who actually found my creativity because I was always in trouble fighting. You cuss me out, I'm gonna cuss you back. Moved to Verbena, Alabama from Colorado. My whole community was across the street was Mr. and Mrs. Bookthong. Taught us about the egg rolls and would teach us, the whole Vietnamese concept of family. up the street, I had the quinceañeras every Friday night. That child turned 16 or 15 every Friday night because there was a quinceañera every Friday. And then my next door neighbors was this little white girl named Heather Dotson, and the girl who did my hair was this Black Power feminist at the age of 16 who would braid my hair. So I had all of this beautiful community. And when you moved to Verbena, Alabama, population 1,500, 5 of us in my graduation class of 20 were Black. You do, come on now. Y'all understand where we're going. Right after the civil rights movement, so nigga was still a thing. You understand what I'm saying? It was still widely used. So my professors, my teachers would call us that. So I began to work it out. You know, always been tall. So it's always been an issue being voluptuous. You know what I'm talking about? And I would just, you know, my 3rd suspension, my father came to me. He was like, "You are going to Tutwiler." I was like, "I am not." He was like, "If you don't get it together, I'm going to see you in Tutwiler." He said, "Figure it out." He brought me 8 tubes of paint, 10 T-shirts, and I've been painting ever since. So that's where it all came from. So 18, in college, learned about the African diaspora, sex trafficking of Black bodies and Black girls. My professor reminded me of my teachers that were very racist, right? So I said, instead of knocking this man out, I'm going to drop out of school. Y'all following me? I left college as a college dropout, started selling those T-shirts that I painted, the whole collection that I made. I actually sold it and lived off of my T-shirts, my mugs, everything that I had that I could dream of. I created merchandise, and I literally had that job for 3 years. I received a phone call from my mother. "We need you to come home, Montgomery, Alabama." They opened up this beautiful organization where they would help the formerly incarcerated, like the lady that we talked to. They gave places for people to sleep, and wonderful, wonderful organization. "We need you to come home because you're the creative one. We need you to take us to the next level." I'm like, "You got 5 other kids, call one of them." "No, we feel that God is calling you." "No, there's a pill for that." It's called schizophrenia. "God didn't call me, he called you." And my mama said, she said, "Just give us a couple of years until we get started." So I came and I stayed. I opened up an organization called I Am More Than, where I would teach young people that we're not niggas, bitches, and hoes. I'm sorry. We're sisters and brothers, queens, beautifuls, right? And so 10 years later, my ovaries are talking. All right, this was in 2002. And in 2012, my ovaries was like, "Michelle, we want to have some babies." I'm not as courageous as her because I actually like the brothers. And I was like, I can't find no brothers here because, you know, they were all on the down low during that time. There wasn't nobody coming out. So I was like, what we going to do? So I said, okay, I'm going to leave and I'm going to Chicago, Illinois. And I wanted to take my students. I had, up to that point, I had 56 students. And I wanted to take them to see Bryan Stevenson. Y'all ever heard of Bryan Stevenson? Equal Justice Initiative, beautiful Legacy Museum, National Memorial for Peace and Justice. He my boyfriend, he don't know. Listen, tell that my boyfriend, he don't know. Don't tell the sister because she don't know either, but I'm just saying. Legacy Museum, absolute. Bryan Stevenson, oh my God, I was shook. Because I had been in Montgomery, Alabama all these years and never heard of anybody with the same type of mindset. And you know what I'm talking about because they help the the incarcerated, and they love them like we love them. So I was just hooked on this dude. I was like, listen, I want to take my students to watch him argue Evan Miller v. Alabama. He argued a case before the Supreme Court. I took those kids up there. Oh my God, we were all just crazy. Black and brown kids, never been out of Montgomery, never been out of Georgia. Took them, they were completely changed. On our way back, one by one, the students were standing up. Ms. Browder, teach us how to be more. Another one, third generation housing projects. Ms. Browder, I want to get out of housing projects. I don't want to bring up my children in housing projects. Can you teach us how to be entrepreneurs? So I'm like, you know what? Okay. I'm trying to go to Chicago. I'm trying to leave. I said, I'll stay until my last student. My last student is now 21. She runs the More Up campus, where the Mothers of Gynecology proudly stands in between the place where J. Marion Sims tortured them to the plantation. I literally did what I said I was going to do to honor these kids, and now I can't leave because I'm 52, my ovaries gone. I'm just saying. Ain't no need in having no children because they ain't, y'all know that menopause is real. But anyway, I decided to stay, and because of that, it's been such a blessing to be able to use my art now to change the narrative in healthcare. I did not know that when I came home in 2002, as I began to study the history of Montgomery, Alabama, and Alabama as it is, the iconography alone has, at our state's capital, J. Marion Sims, the first president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis, and another surgeon that stands there, right? So I told my students I would stay, but if I stay, more takes money. So I created a business called More Than Tours, and I started taking people around on civil rights tours. I bought a truck, tricked it out. I called it the Freedom Rides. It's still riding today, 8 years later. And I tell the story, the civil rights story, from a different perspective, hence the red glasses. And it was during COVID, J. Marion Sims, every time I ride by that Capitol, state's Capitol, you've been on our tour, state's Capitol, I cringe because this man and what he did to black bodies, not just black women and black girls, but black men and black children, how a lot of his subjects were murdered because of his experimentations. And so one day I rode by and I said, if he's the father of gynecology, where are the mothers? I was triggered. I went back to 18. So I went and I started revisiting my artwork. So it was during COVID. And y'all, when you don't have kids, you ain't got no partner. I'm out there. I got 9 rescue horses. So I went out to the horses for my own sanity, and I'm starting to talk to my horses. I'm grooming the horses. And this one champion horse, they wanted to put that horse down. They wanted to kill him, but we said, no, bring him on. And it's a family farm. So it's, my siblings, each one of us, we all have a house on the farm. And so I'm out there grooming this horse, and I said, what are we gonna do? We can't do tours. It's COVID, right? You can't do anything, so how are we gonna live? Y'all, I swear to God, don't judge me. It does not leave this room. But I said to Red, Red, what are we gonna do? The horse turned around and said, I don't know. And I said, that ain't the ovaries talking. I'm starting to lose my mind. So I decided that I would go back and revisit my art, and that I would go to San Francisco, met this beautiful woman out in San Francisco. Her name is Dana Albany. I had to literally convince her. It took us a whole year to convince her to teach me how to weld. I was like, there's a father of gynecology. I want the mothers, right? So she said, okay. November of 21, she says, okay, not 21, I'm sorry, 20. She says, bring all of your art, or send me your artwork, send me $50,000, because I'm gonna rent out this place and you're gonna have to pay us to help you, to show you how to do this thing. So I said, okay. Mind you now, this is during COVID. I fly out to San Francisco. I spent a month and a half. When I came back, did you all look at the website? Did you see I had that head, half of a head. She didn't even have all of this. Half a head, half pair of legs, and 20 different boxes with skeletons in them. I was determined to do this thing for us, to tell this story about us in healthcare, and Kira Johnson, and all of these women that are dying because of medical malpractice and treatment. Came home, opened up my own shop, took me 2 months, and I started welding again to finish the project. And I was finished by September of 21. The mothers go up. I'm like, oh my God, it was amazing. It was not magical, it was spiritual. So many people came out. It was about 150 people that gathered to watch the mothers go up. And I get teary-eyed now because I don't know, it was like a blink. That whole time I went through a lot in San Francisco. When they tell you that, what's his name? James Baldwin said there's not anything different between Birmingham and San Francisco. It's just the distance. The racism is just the same, right? And I experienced that in the shop because one of the mothers has a big butt. Y'all gotta come see her. She's got, she got a Lizzo on her. Wait a minute, Lisa ain't got no big booty. Who would we say? Who? Stallion. I'm gonna have to put a name over there. But one of them has, but I talk about Sarah Bartman, the woman who was kidnapped and enslaved and put in a human zoo at the age of 17, died at 24 for, what she went through. And so basically, September 21, mothers go up, beautiful ceremony, and I'm standing there talking to myself, because y'all know I ain't got no husband, no partner, so I'm talking to myself. Everybody's like, oh my God, this is so amazing. I'm like, but we gotta teach this history. It's not enough to erect these monuments and not talk about where we are now. How do we equate to where we are now? 2021. I'm like, hey, I call up this woman by the name of Deetra Cooper Owens. Medical bondage, go get the book. Medical bondage. She's a historian. She was like, I'll come. Called up a doctor, Dr. Veronica Pimentel. I don't know if you know her. She's the one who said, you know what, we need a day. She's been petitioning ACOG to have a day to talk about Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsy, and for the medical malpractice and for the experimentations. Deetra Cooper Owens is her name, the historian, Dr. Veronica Pimentel, and then I called one other sister. Her name is Deliso Alford. She's a professor, but she's also an attorney. You've heard about the Henrietta Lacks case? Ben Crump, she worked behind the scenes on that. She's a bad sister. She's the one, she's an attorney, but she's the one who pressed and found the malpractice or whatever it was that they were going through. And so her name is Deliso Alford. And so now she'll be at our conference too. So anyway, I called these ladies and they have their own following. So I was like, okay, so they said, we'll come. I put it up. We had 150 people that signed up. This is our first conference. 150 people. Y'all, here I am talking to myself again. Don't judge me. Because y'all be in the bathroom talking to yourself too. Don't even do it. So I said, self, wouldn't this be amazing if we could teach this at the conference, but teach and have a convening in the backyard of where the Negro Women's Hospital was that J. Marion Sims actually opened to do his experiments. Hear me and my crazy self, a little schizophrenic because I talk to myself. So I called the people that own the building. The place is called First Finance Company. I called them. I said, hey, I would like to have a convening in the backyard to teach this history. The gentleman says, why don't you go down to the building? The owner is there. I go down to the building. I pull up 33 Perritt Street, and there's this tall white man, and when he turned around, he looks like Mike Pence. And I jolted. I was like, oh, Proud Boy here. Don't judge me because I judged him. I was like, they're not going to let me do this. Literally, y'all, when you see Mike Pence, think of this dude. So I told him what I wanted to do, and he says, oh, Ms. Browder, he said, do you need access to the back? Do you need access to the building? And I said, no, I just need your backyard. So he's like, sure, you could do that. He said, I'm sorry, I thought you were here to buy the building. This actual space where J. Marion Sims cut on these women. These girls had what they call a fistula. Dr. Jamila, the fistula. It's a hole. Renders them incontinent. They can't hold their urine, and then oftentimes fecal matter as well. It's dirty, it smells. In some countries, like in Africa today, they're viewed as leopards. They're outcasts because they smell, and there's no cure for it until the mother's gynecology, right? So he says, I thought you were here to purchase this building, which is on the site where all of this happened. I said, no. I said, but wait, let's talk about this. How much are you trying to sell the building for? He said $100,000. Now, y'all, this is literally a half block from the slave market where these girls were bought, sold, and traded. It is a half block from that turn from Selma to Montgomery. It is also where secession happened. In Montgomery, we call ourselves the cradle of the Confederacy, birthplace of the civil rights movement, because it all happened right there. You walk out the door, half a block, you're at where history unfolded. $100,000 for this building. I said, sir, what's wrong with the building? He's like, Ms. Browder, If I tell you what's wrong with it, if you ever say anything, I'll deny it. I said, what's wrong with the building? He said, there's paranormal activity happening in the building. I laughed. He turned beet red. Was not funny. He didn't find it funny at all. And so I said, okay, I want you to put a pin right there. Before I left for San Francisco, February 28 or 21, we had an event at the Fountain, the slave market. I curated this thing called Art on the Square, where I have my artist friends. We all get together. Remember those friends I told you I called up and they were like, no, we can't do it because them. Called them up. I called them up and I said, hey, we can't do Art on the Square this year, but let's do something to honor mothers. And I had all of those artists to curate a picture, or create a picture to honor a black woman or their mothers, right? And so we adorned the square with all of this beautiful art. This was February 21. Mind you, the mothers go up 21 to September. You get me? So February 21, we did this for the mothers. I actually curated a tour to walk to this building where Mike Pence is. I said, let me tell y'all what happened. 160 people showed up. We're all in masks. We're walking up the street. People, when they turn that corner, people begin to weep because you could feel the paranormal activity. You get where I'm going? We get to the building. We lay roses. We weep. We cry. We sing songs. That was it. I go on, create the mothers, February 21. September 21, the mothers are up. Following year, talking to the owner of the building. Y'all caught up? So Mike Pence says, there's paranormal activity in the building. I said, what kind of paranormal activity? He says, Michelle, we see people walking. You can hear children crying. Upstairs there's a storage, but you can hear people walking and banging on doors. And I said, I think I need this building. And he reminded me of my professor with his response. He says, what would you do with it? Now, you know I was ready to fight. So I said I would create a space for doulas and midwives. Offer them a space to help women who need resources, right? For whatever reason, these OBGYNs and these got problems with these midwives. Why don't we come together and have a conversation and try to help one another? You need a midwife in the place with you, and we need you, and you need them, and we all need each other, right? He was like, you know, I like this. I said, but wait, upstairs I would turn it into a teaching space for first-year medical students, because right now in your textbooks, it says that black women and black people have a higher tolerance for pain, or that we experience pain different. Am I wrong? This is what they said. I said, let's change all that. We're going to create space. They can come here. They can learn this history. We can teach them a different way, change the purview. He's like, Miss Browder, I sure do like that idea. He said, if you're going to do all that to this building, I'll let you have it for $75,000. I said, shut up, Mike. I swear to God I did. He said, my name is Jim. He said, who is Mike? I said, never mind. You don't need to know. You'll find out in the book. He's like, Miss Browder, I love it. Y'all, and I feel so bad because I judged this white man. I was like, proud boy, Confederate, blah, blah, blah. Just named it all now. He was like, if you're going to do all that, $75,000. I said, oh, my God. I said, okay, but wait, what's wrong with the building? Is there asbestos? He said, no. I said, what's wrong with the roof? He's like, we just spent $60,000 and we put a roof on. He's like, we don't want it no more. We just don't want it. My staff, they left it. Literally, you could look through the window and you could see the open file cabinets from where they just picked up and left. All of the furniture, they left us that too. The security, they left all of that too. The phones was on, everything. He's like, we're done. So I said, can I make you an offer? Now I got a successful business, been in business for 8 years. I don't want for nothing. I'm so grateful, but I ain't got no debt. I'm a for real Black Panther. My father taught us no debt. Y'all clapping, but when you ain't got no debt, that's bad credit, right? If I can't get a loan. My bank still won't give me a loan. Even with that $250,000 sitting in there, they still won't give it to me because I ain't got no debt, right? So I said, can I give you $35,000? Southern Poverty Law Center gave us a $50,000 unrestricted grant. just like 2 weeks before this happened. I said, can I give you $35,000? You carry the loan. First Sun Finance Company is a predatory lending company that preys on black folk who ain't got credit. Y'all feel where I'm going with this? He said, let me go home and talk to my wife. He said, how long would you need? I said, sir, just give me 2 months, right? Just give me 2 months, and I'll pay it off. I bought a trolley for $78,000, paid it off in 7 months because my bank wouldn't give me a loan. Pulled it up to the bank when I bought it. Here come the loan officers. Ms. Browder, did we fund this for you? I said, no, in God we trust. Then I said, give me all my money out this bank. You see what I'm talking about? I digress. Monday, talking to Ms. Gone with the Wind. Calls her. I swear to God, she's like Scarlett. Ms. Browder, tell us what you want to do with this building. I heard you want to buy the building, blah, blah, blah. So I'm telling her. And she says, oh, Michelle, we're so proud of the work you're doing. Give us that $35,000. You can have this building. So to tell the stories, when you say paranormal, some people say spirits, some people say ancestors. Y'all, God led us to this place. I don't know who you believe, how you believe. You got to believe in something to know that we were drawn to that building and that now a black woman owns it. Where they were tortured, where he beat these women and men and children, where he sodomized. This man, Sims also owned slaves himself, or enslaved men, women, and children. And to now be able to hold that narrative and to hold up a mirror to not just the history, but to everyone that's a medical practitioner, that's a birth worker, a nurse, a social worker. Yes, ma'am? Yeah, but to own the space and to, in 2025, open it up so that I can have Dr. Jamila over there to come and talk to these medical students when they come down to Montgomery, Alabama for this history. I'm already recruiting you. It's a very powerful thing to be in this position, but we couldn't stop there. So I was like, okay, any philanthropists, y'all know about writing grants and all this stuff? I don't know, I'm a businesswoman. We don't do all that. So I'm like, how are we gonna come up with $5.5 million? I was like, I can't wait. I don't know how to do the shimmy. Y'all know about philanthropy? You gotta do the shimmy to play the game. I don't know how to do that. So I'm driving, I'm going to this space, and I'm going to this place, and I said, we need a medical unit because in Alabama, we have 45 counties without maternal health care. You talk about infant mortality. You talk about maternal mortality. We are dying. More than 3 to 4 times likely to die. So I said, so I had called and was trying to find out, about a medical unit, $131,000. Well, it doesn't make sense to put that kind of money in a medical unit. I'm driving, going to speak at this event, and I see this row of campers, and this event was up in Confederateville. All you can see is these Confederate flags, and I'm driving up to Huntsville, past Huntsville, and I see these row of campers, and I said, how come you can't take a camper and turn it into a medical space for doulas and midwives and doctors to come and evaluate patients? I pulled over, and I bought a camper. And the white man that sold it to me, conviction hit him because he was like, he started crying and talking. So I wanted to tell him the story about Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsy and what happened with them and how this systemic racism still plays a part and where we are today. And the man began to weep. And he said, I want to apologize for the things that we've done to black folk. I swear to God, y'all, we got pictures. He was like, please pray for me. Now, y'all know the prayer I prayed. I was like, Lord, don't let this man burn in hell for what he did to black people. But we did. We came together. We prayed with him, and we talked with him about this history, and it convicted him. He was like, oh, my God. Bought it. I get a phone call. I'm headed home. I had to go speak somewhere else, so I was gone for about a week. I'm headed home, and this rich white woman from Seattle called me up. I'm pulling into my driveway. She's like, Michelle, I've been thinking about you. I was like, yes, ma'am. She was like, I sent you a check for $25,000. She said, I want to support what you're doing. Guess how much I paid for the camper? $25,000. So I'm telling you all of this
because there is a move. When we talked about a movement, there's a movement, and that movement oftentimes takes money, takes funding and resources. And so what we're trying to do is not just raise the money, but awareness about what we're doing with the clinic and the space, but also to help those that are practicing to change their mind about how they practice. Everybody talks about DEI. I don't believe in it. I'm sorry, don't judge me, because I believe that if you had empathy, dignity, and respect for mankind, whether it's him, them, they, whomever, she, her, if you have empathy and dignity and respect for that individual, you're gonna have DEI. You're gonna bring them to the table. You're gonna be equitable. You're gonna allow them to be a part, right? And so that's what we talk about in terms of, and that's what this place is about. It's about rendering to humankind and looking at people and saying, that's a human, that's a life, that's a person that needs to be loved and nurtured and deserves medical care. And so that's what we're hoping to do in our space, is to create a space where we can teach those things, and not only that, but save lives. So now our medical camper, we started off in Selma, Alabama. We're going to our fourth, we're going to Shorter next, because Shorter, they're closing hospitals in Montgomery or in Alabama. There's 2 more that's gonna be closing, and they will not have maternal care. So the camper, we have seen over 250 women and girls that are in dire need of support. And so that's the work that I'm doing. That's where your money for your t-shirts and all of that goes, is to continue to raise awareness and to uplift the community so that we can have you all to come down and be a part of this amazing journey with us. So are there any questions? Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. There's been, I've shown up, at the time we didn't have air conditioning. PBS NewsHour came out and did a story on us, and the place was cold. So I'm looking at the window, there's condensation on the window, and I'm like, oh God. I said, y'all don't, I started talking to them, because now I got somebody to talk to. Anyway, don't judge me. So I was like, look, don't y'all act up when I open up this door. So I opened up the door, and we all went up, and it was so cold that you could see your breath. And again, there's condensation on the door. And so the gentleman from PBS, Canvas, they do this whole thing on Canvas and artists. We're walking in, and I'm shivering. So I go out to get my jacket. The cameraman comes in, he sets his camera down, and he's shivering. And he looks up and said, now mothers, we're not here to disrupt you. Mind you, I didn't tell them about the paranormal activity. He was like, we're not here to disrupt. We're here to just tell your story. And as he spoke, it began to get warmer and warmer in the room. Those type of things have happened. Yeah, so now, and our air conditioner still doesn't work to that capacity, but you could see your breath, and it was very cold in there. And we all had that experience in terms of we knew what was happening. You could feel it. You get goosebumps and chills. A lot of people, they weep when they come to when they open the door. I think everybody has an experience. You came with your group, and it's just, you could feel the presence there. It's not anything that's angry. It's more so like a relief, you know? Like now our story will be told. Yeah, anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Oh, Bay Minette, okay.